and welcome to Not All Fire. I'm Jude Evans and Joe Hart is on holiday this week. So we've been ably joined by Jason McDaid, who is a fire engineer and founder of the 78% Club, which is about imposter syndrome and the hidden about the hidden cognitive strain. Is that correct? That relates to making sure you are not found out if anything goes wrong. So we're not going to do any news. We haven't really had any major fires, so we're not really going to do any news. We're not going to talk about the HHSRS consultant document being dropped. We will talk about that next week with whoever I find to talk to me next week. But we're going to basically start to chat to Jason about what he does, his understanding, and how he can help all of us, not just in the fire sector, but anybody else, because most people, or 78% of people, suffer from that. Is that correct? Welcome, Jason. Thank you very much for the show.
Hi, Jude. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
So, tell me your story. Tell us how you got to be where you are. Tell us how you got to be a fire engineer. Tell us how you decided to come up with the 78% Club.
Yeah. So I went back to college in my 30s. I was a professional chef for about 10 years and decided I wanted a job that was less stressful and better hours than chefing.
Oh, such long hours. Yeah, no,
yeah,
totally.
Somebody sent me into fire engineering, so I don't know how that worked out in the end, stress-wise. I know it definitely wasn't a reduction, slightly better hours maybe. So I graduated college in 2012 when the global recession was at its peak. There wasn't a job to be had. I sent 120 CVs to Ireland and UK, 120 rejections, or not even rejections, just apologies really from people saying, "No, sorry, it's just nothing happening." Wow. So I sent 2 CVs to New Zealand and I got 2 job offers.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, so both of these were offers of a job with half decent salary, flights paid for myself and my family. So I had my wife and 4 kids, and they had flights, visas, shipping container full of our belongings, and free accommodation for a month. So yeah, it was either the option of staying in Ireland on the dole with my lovely fire engineering degree and doing nothing with it, or moving us all down to New Zealand. So we all packed up and we went down there, and I started work for a small fire engineering consultancy. I was the director and the associate fire engineer. So it was a great place to start. I was hands-on the full time, I was one-on-one with the director and the associate, and I joined just at a time the company was really growing and it grew under me, and I kind of always stayed there in that third position down, and people come in, and it was a brilliant start to my career. But early on in the career, little things started popping up. There were little doubts in my memory. I just couldn't remember the tables and the codes and the travel distance for this. And gradually over the first year, this really started to impact me. It's going like, why can't I remember that? They can all rhyme off these codes. They can do it. And I used to wonder, like, how did I even get an engineering degree? I can't remember any of this stuff. You know, it's going to like, who gave me an engineering degree? And what if these guys find out they're after shipping us across the world and paying a lot of money, and you know they'll find out that I'm this total fool who can't do anything. So that really started to build on me then, and it just got deeper and deeper and deeper, and you know, to the point where I would have classed myself as the worst fire engineer in New Zealand. I had given myself that title. And so then I stayed there for 4.5 years, got raises and counter offers when I went to leave, and you know, promotions, and but internally I couldn't accept this. I was going like, why are they even doing this? Why aren't they firing me? Why aren't they, you know, celebrating when I handed me notice instead of offering me $30,000 raise if I stayed, you know? But so I couldn't accept this kind of that I was good externally, it didn't match internally. So anyway, we came back to Ireland 2 years later and had to start into the Irish codes. And that totally threw me then. I was back where I was a medium-sized fish in a medium to small pond. I came back here and, I just got to grips with that. And here I was now back into this. And I couldn't remember
learning
it.
new codes again.
And I would think that I would have a picture in my mind of the New Zealand code when it was Irish, and I was going, "Where's that diagram?" And it was in a document from New Zealand. So again, I started going, I can't do this. Like, why am I so stupid? Now I'm the worst fire engineer in Ireland as well as the worst fire engineer in New Zealand. So it really, really kind of broke me down, and my confidence just was shattered. I wanted nothing more than to be out of the career. And so I started just internally going down and down. I had a burnout, depression. It went so far as to suicidal ideation, where I was thinking, Jesus, my family are better off if I just died, because then they get my life insurance and my daughters can afford their wedding, and the mortgage will be paid. So I had all of this sitting at me because I was waiting to be found out and waiting to be exposed as this fool who nobody should ever have hired. And yeah, so I would jump from one company to the next. When I jumped, I thought, I've got 6 months here where nobody knows how crap I am at this. And I can wing it. And then after that, the net will be tightening in. So I would jump and maybe I'd get to 18 months and I'd feel like the net was closing in. I was about to get the phone call from the boss or the email, come down to the meeting room, and the whole company would be there, and they were just going to point at me and tell me, "We have found you out, you're a fraud, we've exposed you, get out." And that was my fear. I lived in this constant fear of that. Every email, every time my phone rang, if I saw the boss walking up the corridor, I'd be like, "Oh my God, he's coming for me." So I was at such a low point at that. Then that's when, the suicidal ideation was continuing through this, the depression, everything was going on its own. So thankfully, I got to a point one day where I nearly broke, and I came home and I told my wife, "I can't do this anymore. I just, I can't." And she says, "You have to get some help. You have to." So I called the doctor, the online GP. He subscribed antidepressants to me. I was put on those the next morning, and the relief of that, even just before they had even kicked in, even that night before it even got them, it was just this relief that I remember nearly crying, because I was thinking, "Oh, I don't have to do this on my own again or anymore. I'm not alone. I've told my wife, I've told the doctor, I'm going down to get tablet. I'm not carrying this burden that, it was like carrying a lot of bricks around with me." And just the relief of being able to put that down. And what I often tell people and find a bit funny is that, like, in New Zealand, I'd done football stadiums, like fire designs for them, huge shopping malls, evacuation modeling, fire modeling, you name it, I've done it. And the building that actually broke me was a 2-story townhouse in the west of Ireland, a little 3 apartments in a row, 2 stories, and they just broke me. And whatever it was, So it's not that it was a huge big job or the pressure or the stress of doing something
straw
huge.
that bite the camel's back.
That was what it was. It was just this little tiny job, and there's nothing to them really when you look at it. When I look back at it now, they don't even need any fire stuff in the ground. I was just like, but so yeah. So part of my recovery journey then involved therapy and the antidepressants, and as I was kind of getting back on track a little, I found out about life coaching, and I said, "Wow, life coaching sounds really cool, because I would love to be able to help other engineers and people in this industry who've been going through the same thing." Because I know lots of people who are all stressed. Every time you're on the phone to an architect or an engineer, we're all stressed and we're all, flat out. No, Jesus, can't wait for Christmas or holidays, whatever.
Totally.
And I says, I'd love to be able to help people like that. So part of my journey then, I trained as a life coach, and I had my own life coach who I would do sessions with. So I'm a fully trained life coach.
Oh,
And
wow.
part of this was then I was having life coaching sessions with my own coach. And I was saying to her that I felt like an imposter in the life coaching field because how am I meant to tell people or help people to be better if I'm propped up by antidepressants, if I've got this mess of a career behind me and this, that I've been a shambles. So she really helped me to see that, that was who I was. That was my battle scars, my war wounds, and that was, this was me coming out of it in this way. And that was why I was, in a good place to help people. So that is where the imposter syndrome thing came into my mind. I want to know more about imposter syndrome. And I used to even think, as I kind of learned more, I used to think that I couldn't even have imposter syndrome about being a fire engineer because I was so crap at it. I had nothing to be feeling an imposter about
Yeah.
because I would read when I was looking into it about, oh, the higher up you go, the more senior you are, the more likely you are to have imposter syndrome. And I was going, I had no right to even have it. I shouldn't have been there. I
You've
deserve
got
to be down.
imposter
So
syndrome about imposter syndrome.
that is exactly it. I wrote
Oh, that's
a
funny.
LinkedIn post with that exact title. That's how bad it was. But I learned more about it. I studied imposter syndrome then. I took a course in that, and I'm an imposter syndrome informed coach now. So, but one of the first to get to the 78% club, the long way that we've gone. The first statistic that I ever read about imposter syndrome when I started looking up was that 78% of people experience imposter thoughts at some point in their career. And I was going, wow, that's an amazingly high amount of people because I thought I was the only guy in New Zealand. I thought I was sitting in the office on my own, wondering why I can't get it. And then come back to Ireland and wonder, why can't I get it here? And thinking I was on my own on this little island of incompetence, when in reality there was maybe 8 out of 10 of the people in my office were also
Also
feeling like
struggling with
this.
that.
They were
Wow.
also
Yes, of
struggling, and we
course.
were we were all struggling independently, like silos, but nobody was saying anything to anybody else. So we all struggled and we all looked like we were doing great and going, yeah, I'm working on
This is
the
amazing. We're
Burj
amazing. Look at
Khalifa,
us.
yeah,
Yeah.
and doing something
I
brilliant.
know.
And you'd look on LinkedIn and everybody's doing great stuff. But 8 out of 10 of them, potentially even more, were really struggling inside. And this was the facade that they were putting on. So that's where the 78% club came from, was that statistic. It just stuck with me. And I wanted
Yeah.
to be able to say, join this club where instead of being on your own, join the 78% of us. And by normalizing that feeling and by allowing people to go, yeah, Jesus, I'm actually in the majority here. So it's easier for me to be able to talk about it. And
Absolutely.
then, yeah, so that's where the 78% club, that's where I came from my days as a chef looking for a change to a fire
Fantastic.
engineer and the founder of the 78% club.
Oh, amazing. I mean, I also I did an engineering degree, but then I did hospitality. So
Mm,
I have worked in those kitchens. I have
uh,
done those hours. But
uh,
oh no, it's really interesting because I know I've had conversations with fellow female fire engineers, and it's like a quite a talked about thing that imposter syndrome hits women more than it hits men. Um, but I suppose 78% of all business owners, and it doesn't matter if you're a fire engineer, it's across
mm,
all sectors.
uh,
It's quite that's huge. But I suppose, I mean, I know every now and again my biggest imposter syndrome is knowing how much I am worth and how much to charge people for my time, which
mm.
sounds really daft, but it's like, oh, no, it's just that's just charging 50. It's I'll just charge
Yeah.
50 quid. It's fine.
At the start, it's 10 grand, and then by the time you hit send on the email, it's down to like
Yeah.
200 quid. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Why?
Jesus.
Oh no, I'm not worth. Why would
Yeah.
anyone want to pay me that much money to
Mm,
give them advice for that? So that's. But it is. It's. I suppose in some ways it's really good. that we get teams of people around us when we're doing this. So, I mean, I know absolutely I can't remember stuff off the top of my head a lot of the time, and I have to look it up. And I will say to people, "Oh no, I can't remember stuff off the top of my head." And then sometimes you can have a discussion with people, and they're like, "Are you sure?" And then I'm like, "No, no, I need to go back and check the guidance again." So, and it's quite an interesting it's quite an interesting thing. Now you run training courses, don't you? You provide support
workshops
and guidance and workshops.
yeah. So the workshops are they guide people through a few steps. We go into imposter syndrome and tell a little about that. And then we introduce the hidden cognitive strain side, and we talk about that. And we just kind of work through how this then kind of manifests itself. And there's the hidden loop of the thoughts, and it's just this repetitive loop or this destructive cycle that you get into, and it's just about interrupting that cycle and it's the thoughts really. It's actually a very easy thing to break the cycle from. I found out the hard way, or I learned the hard way, because I came up and I went so far down and had to crawl my way back up, and eventually got there through lots of trying this and trying that and failing, trying the wrong things. Like at one point I thought, oh, I know a master's, I'll do a master's, that'll help me. It nearly killed me. My wife had to tell me to stop after, I think, about 2 months of the first semester. She's like, you can't keep doing this. I was running on such high octane. She came up to my office one day, it was during COVID, and I was up in the attic office, and she arrived up at about 11 o'clock at night. I had an Audible book on strategies or something like that, playing at 2 times speed. And there was about 200 pages around this audio book playing in double speed so I could listen to it. And I was trying to
oh my goodness me.
write a paper. And she just, the next day, says, no, like, you can't do that. And it, again, was this biggest relief. I was going, oh, because I thought if I knew more, then I would be able to stand up and say, yep, and now I've got a master's, so I have this level of knowledge.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, is that you never actually get there, because there's five competence types, and they're devised by or brought devised by, I suppose, the term by Dr. Valerie Young. She's one of the leading voices in imposter syndrome thinking. And she had come up with these 5 competence types. So they kind of define how we frame our own competence, or how we perceive our competence. So the first one is the perfectionist. Means your primary focus on how something should be done. It has to be done perfect. If it's done perfectly, nobody will be able to expose me or find out. The next one is the expert. This is what I was. So it's the what and how much you know. So it's like, if I keep doing courses, then nobody will be able to question me, because I will have enough knowledge. But you never get enough knowledge. So then there's the soloist, who cares about who completes the task. So you have to do it on your own. You can't accept help. If you need help, then that's a failure, and that's shame. And the natural genius is that they believe that they should be able to do everything straight away without any difficulty. So if they come across something that they're struggling with, then they're going, oh my God, I'm crap. I can't do this. Like, say you guys to take up fire modeling or something like that, and you can't get the hang of it straight away, then they just, that's shame to them that they couldn't get it. And then the 5th type this is the one that's largely attributed to females. It's the superhuman. It means how many roles can you juggle and excel in. So, a lot of women would have that stereotypical role of the mother, the career, the soccer runs, the everything, cooking, cleaning, the whole works, and being in the career. So one of a quote I heard was, women are expected to work like they don't have a family and parent like they don't have a career. And I think that just fits that superhuman one. So they're expecting, that's not to say that men don't do it, but that's just the common stereotype, I suppose. So they're the competence types, and they're what most people will kind of relate to one of those more than the other. And for me, it was the expert. Just
Yeah.
keep doing courses, and and done God knows how many courses during COVID, which is when I was at the real low, and it was to
No.
keep going. So
So explain to me what the hidden cognitive strain is then that comes with imposter syndrome.
so the saying that I have on the front of my website
Mhm.
is, if imposter syndrome is the thought I might be found out, hidden cognitive strain is the exhaustion from spending years making sure you never are. So imposter syndrome is really a fear-based thing.
Human
it's
emotion, I
it's
suppose. Yeah.
yeah, like it's all about fear. So there's three traits of imposter syndrome. One is that you don't believe you're as competent as other people believe you to be, despite external, evidence to the contrary. Like me, pay rise, like 30 grand pay rise to stay,
Mm.
promotions, being headhunted, all of that. There was loads of evidence saying that I was a competent fire engineer, but I thought I was the worst in New Zealand. So when I took a job, I was just going, oh my God, I really should have told these people how bad I am. And, why did they believe these lies? What did I say in that interview that convinced them that I wasn't? So that's the first one, about not believing you're as competent as others believe you to be. The second is that you believe that your success comes from luck or some other external factor. You knew someone, there was an admin error, an IT error, the secretary sent the acceptance letter to you by mistake and the rejection letter to some other guy called Jason, and he was meant to get the job. So you'll find something to explain away your success and your achievements, rather than it being down to you and your skills and your competence, basically. So then the third one is that you live in fear of being exposed, being found out as this fraud who's not competent and who only got in here by luck. So they're the three traits of the imposter. And the fear one is that's the deep, dark one. Because like with the emails and the boss coming down the corridor, I was just in fear constantly
Oh, it
that.
can eat you up inside.
Oh
Absolutely
yeah,
eat
like
you
it,
up.
it was, and and you're thinking like if I get sacked, I'll never get another job in this industry because word will spread. Fire engineering is a small industry, just
We're a
even
very small
across the
group.
UK.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, So I thought, if I get sacked, I'll never get another job. How am I going to pay for things? My daughter's wedding, the cars, the mortgage, all that. So it was that fear of being exposed that was the real thing, that that was the deep, dark part of it. So then hidden cognitive strain comes from that. That's the strain of spending, or the exhaustion of spending years making sure you're never found out. So it's all about
Hiding everything.
masking and coping strategies. So there's a number of coping strategies that um we kind of we don't implement them consciously. They're more subconsciously, because our coping strategies are protective things. They're what our mind puts in place to protect us from this exposure. So what we're trying to do is protect ourselves from getting exposed. So some coping strategies would be perfectionism. If the work is flawless, it can't be criticized. So
Yeah.
you're just putting in so much work on it, you just can't do anything. You can't let it finish because you just want to get it perfect. And when you aim for perfection, you end up with failure every time, because you'll never achieve perfection. And then you always feel like you've come up short. So this eats you up inside. The other one, similar to perfectionism, is overworking, where we say, right, if I work harder and longer than everybody else in the office, then they'll see my value and they won't know that I'm terrible. But if somebody comes up then and says, oh, pats in the back, that was a great report you put up there, then you're going, oh no, I put in about 25 hours into that. It should have taken me 5. Now I need to do that for everything because I need
Yeah.
to achieve that level
Same
again.
level.
So
Yeah.
now I need to keep on going at that. So that ends up in burnout and exhaustion really, really quick. Flying under the radar is another one. So you're in a meeting, questions are being asked, you've got an answer in your head, but you just say nothing, and you're kind of sitting there going, "Oh, I'd love to put up my hand and tell my point, but what if I'm completely wrong and I look like a fool?" So you lose out on putting your word out. You lose out on people seeing you for, "Oh, that was a good point," and anything else to add. So that's a real career affecting one, whereas you've got the overworking, it can look like, "Oh, they're brilliant, we'll promote them." But the hiding, you could be twice as intelligent or as good an engineer as the overworker, but you'll just drift into the background. You're the grey man or woman, and so you're not getting seen, and that makes you feel like a little mouse then, because you're just kind of sitting there and you drift in. The other coping strategy is procrastination. If you don't start it or you don't finish it, then it can't be judged.
So much procrastination all the time, isn't there?
Yeah. So if once you finish something, you have to hand it up for review, and there's nothing worse than an internal review when you're going, "Oh my God, this is me." I often describe it like a little hedgehog lying on its back with its little soft belly exposed to the hawks and the eagles above, and it's just you're that exposed from it. So there are two then they're quite commonly known ones. The two coping strategies that were big with me, and I coined the phrase myself, were parachuting and peacocking. And I mentioned parachuting before. It was leaving a job just as the net was about to close on you, and just jumping. So that was my parachute. I'd have another job and I'd jump, and that was me free. Yeah. And then the peacocking is when you land into the new job and you're there with your chest puffed out and your tail feathers are going, and you're, I can do this and I've worked on that, and I'll solve all your fire engineering needs. And that masking is exhausting. So it is, because you're lying, or in your brain you're telling yourself you're lying, and you're saying you're just fooling these people, and they're going to find out. And it's such a destructive cycle, the parachuting, the peacocking, parachuting, peacocking, because you never parachute from the same level. So you parachute, you might be at upwards. A 9, and then by the time you've peacocked enough, and then you parachuting again, you're maybe only at a 7, and then you go down, and then you're at a 4. And by the end, my last parachute, I was probably just at a 1, and you're nearly just stepping off the plane. You're just like, I have nothing even to bring to the peacock, and you're just, you're emotionally exhausted and drained from it. So that's the coping strategies that your brain has kind of tried to protect you from this fear of being exposed. So that's in the workshops, I say, look, we have an imposter thought, and then that cycles into a coping mechanism. So we do this, then that leads into the hidden cognitive strain, because we're masking, we're parachuting, we're overworking, we're trying to perfect. And then this leads into our performance capability. So if you're a new business owner, a business owner, this might be pricing decisions, launching something new, different things like that. You mentioned even yourself the pricing confidence, and that's one of the things
literally in the whole of the last 15 years that I've been doing this, I'm still a bit like, how much am I worth?
Yeah, that's one of the things we work with new business owners on, is about pricing confidence, and it's about kind of being able to just go, right, I'll do it. I'm nervous, whatever. I'll put it in and see what happens. It's not too much more complicated than that, but that's really what it is. It's just trying to get that.
I've worked a lot on that. Yeah, I've worked a lot on that. One of my friends would turn around and say, it's in the nicest possible way, it's having the confidence of a mediocre man or a mediocre white man. It's like, no, I can do this. It's fine. It's fine. Exactly. So it's you put yourself into a different mindset of who you think would be the other person who would be competing for that work. So
that's it, and it's the way that we do it in the workshops. It's just about interrupting the thought of, I'm not worth that, or which of my coping strategies is at work here? What's the fear that I'm kind of hiding from? And there's a phrase called the cruncher, I think it's called. I can't remember now the exact thing, but it's, and I ask people this in the workshop. So it's, what is the worst possible thing you could imagine walking into a room and being heard said about you. So if you just happen to walk into a room and you heard people talking about you, what would be the worst possible thing, I suppose career wise? And a lot of people were saying like, oh, they're a crap fire engineer, or she
Yeah.
charges too much, or she thinks she's worth more than that. And so it's can get we don't ask people to read them out, so it's just something they'll write it down and they'll work on. But it's a really valuable tool to kind of identify what is this big fear that you're pricing yourself too low from. What would you hate people thinking about you if
Yeah.
you went in like at 6 grand instead of 2 grand? And are they going to, oh my god, how dare she do this, she's nowhere near competent enough? And so it's
You're
about
right.
working that.
Yeah.
And then it's
Trying to
about
understand where it comes from.
yeah, and then it's about going right. Well, what is the truth in that? Like, if I think about that thought objectively, without any kind of emotions or hunches or feelings or anything, just pure fact. What is the truth in that statement I just said? Or
No,
she's
yeah.
not worth that much money, and go, well, I've actually ran my own business for 15, 20 years. I've got lots of valuable clients who come back to me and respect me. I've got a degree, I've got this, and you can kind
Yeah.
of go, well, actually, maybe I am worth that. And you can kind of,
Maybe I am worth that. Yeah.
and you
No,
kind of
it is,
build up
yeah.
you build up a new narrative, to use that kind of term, rather than taking the imposter thought, we kind of put a little bit of space in between. You go, hang on a minute, that's just a thought. And there's a great saying that you don't have to believe everything you think. And that's what your thought is, oh, I'm not worth that. And then you go, oh, am I actually? All right, yeah, maybe I am. And even say then to yourself, like, if one of my friends came to me and explained this situation that she was in, the exact same situation, what advice would I give them? Would you be going, oh yeah, charge low, keep going, you're not
No,
worth
you always,
that. But
yeah, no, you're right.
uh, if it was somebody you cared about, you'd be going, no, you're worth loads of it. Look at all your achievements and what you've done. And so yeah, it's just about breaking that thought cycle and introducing this new space in there. So instead of imposter thought, coping mechanism, hidden cognitive strain going, and then affecting your business decisions or your fire engineering decisions, and that you're doubting your competence or triple checking something, like, am I the worst fire engineer in Ireland? No, I've got jobs, I've got pay rises, I've got promotions, I've got others, I've got loads of experience. So I can objectively say, no, I'm not. And even if I went, am I a bad fire engineer? I go, no, I'm actually not. Do I know my stuff? Yes. Do I have a bad memory? Yes. I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was just about a year and a half ago. And one of the traits of that is a really bad memory. So that answered all of
Oh,
my New Zealand stuff
all
then.
of
It
those
was like,
questions from back in the
yeah, it
day.
was like, why can't I remember
Yeah.
that? It was going, all right, my executive function, my whatever that part of the front of the brain just doesn't
Mm.
remember things very well. So, yeah, it was, you can often have things like that where you can go, yep, so I have a bad memory, but I'm intelligent enough to get an engineering degree. I've got myself plenty of jobs.
Yeah.
I've jumped out of lots of them, but now that I understand why I jumped, I know that it wasn't because I was going to be exposed and because I was so crap. It was because of my fear. So that's part of the workshop, is trying to work out when fear is arising and interrupting it so that it doesn't make the decisions. So when we take fear out of the decision making process and we do it from a rational point of view, we just sit back a little bit and go, oh yeah, like, I am worth double that fee, or so,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So I'm just going to try and turn my lights up because I've suddenly gone, I'm sitting in the dark, it would appear. Um, there we go. Here we go. I see if that's a bit better. So do you, I hate to use the word cured because there wasn't really anything wrong with you in the first place. Are you able to cope better? Have you stayed in the same job for a few years? Do you still feel the need to parachute out of any job? Or are
yeah.
you coping?
No, I'm a lot more stable now. So I've been in my current job for 3 years, which is the longest that I've been in one since the 4.5 years in New Zealand, my very
Oh,
first
wow.
job. So just coming up to my 3-year anniversary with that. When
Congratulations. Well
I
done.
okay, when I was doing the life coaching training, my 100% goal was to get out of fire engineering because I hated it so much. I hated it. I hated LinkedIn because it showed all the fire engineers. I hated every
Oh,
other
hate.
fire
Yeah, no.
engineer.
LinkedIn is
Uh,
bad.
oh, it's poison,
It's
so it
very
is. It's
bad.
terrible. But I
Yeah.
hated every fire engineer that was on there because they'd be putting on something. Oh, here's a paper we're working. I go, that's all crap. It doesn't mean anything because I hated it all so much because I felt that I just couldn't get it. So how come they can all get it and I can't? So
Yeah.
now I work full time as a fire engineer still. I do the 78% club kind of on my spare time and on days off and annual leave and whatnot. But I don't now want to leave fire engineering. I want to stay in fire engineering. I'm happy to. I want to work maybe 2, 3 days a week in fire engineering and be able to devote more time to the 78% club because I get great uh, feedback and what's the word,
Job
satisfaction, or
satisfaction.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is. There's a term I just can't think, but it's very rewarding. I suppose that's what it is.
Yes.
I feel very rewarding, and a lot of people relate to it, and they tell me and they email me and saying that how much it just sounded like their own story. So I really do want to
Mm.
do that with more of my time and kind of split fire engineering and that as well. So that to me is such a change because 2 years ago I would have just jumped out of fire engineering as quick as I could have. But as my journey back up through all the different exploration of this and that, then I found out, I don't actually hate this. I am actually good at my job.
Mm.
I am competent. I've got a lot to say. I can, if I wanted to put a post on LinkedIn about fire engineering, I would quite happily do it. Whereas before, I wouldn't have even dared comment on somebody's post in case everybody was
Yeah.
going, "Oh my God." So
Yeah,
yeah,
you don't know
like
anything. Yeah, I get it.
it has totally changed my whole. It's totally changed my whole life from 4 years ago. I had a situation where there was, an incident with a bus where I had a choice of move out of the way or don't move out of the way, and I didn't move out of the way, and the bus flew past. But it was a kind of a pivotal moment in my life where I was going, yeah, I really should have wanted to step out of the way of that. And
Yeah.
that was only 4 years ago. And today I'm here and I'm talking to people. I'm doing talks online with colleagues with my old university with engineering students in fourth year, and I do talks with engineering companies and local business owners, and it's totally changed everything really for me. Just being able to understand that these thoughts were just thoughts. They weren't me, they weren't character flaws, they were just little traits that had maybe crept in, and the undiagnosed ADHD probably played a big role in it.
Yeah.
And, finding that out, that was really powerful for me, really, opened up an awful lot and allowed me to accept myself a lot. But even without that, there's a lot of things that have changed in my life for the better of my family, my kids, my
Mm.
wife, because you don't just have a stressful day in work, you have a stressful day and you bring it home, and your wife, she'll bear the brunt, or the kids. And, there's one day I remember, it'll stay with me till I die. My son, who was about 15 at the time, and I was working at home, and he came over and he brought me a cup of tea. I was working at my desk, and there's loads of milk in the tea, and I don't like a lot of milk. There's too much milk in that. Sorry, I didn't mean to curse, but
We might bleep it.
that's what I just said it, and it was because I was having a stressful time at
Yeah.
work, and because I was so down, and just to remember his face just dropping, and I was just, oh
Yeah.
my God, that's not okay for me to be doing that to my poor son who just brought me a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And I still feel guilty about it. I still feel bad. I could never make up anything I do, will never erase that memory for me. Hopefully, he forgets about it. But that was how it came home with me as
Yeah.
well. So that's the really negative side that isn't work based.
So has your wife really noticed then, and your family really noticed the change in you?
They have a lot. It's kind of it's more noticeable to me because a lot of it was internal.
Yeah.
You know, I was sitting there stewing in my brain, and a lot of it was like that. But I'm less reactive. I'm less snappy. I'm less. I used to
Volatile, perhaps.
volatile.
I feel volatile.
I
That
was
might be a word that could be
Yeah,
used
I
there.
was going to say I have a blog I was writing at the time, and one of the characters or the personas that I had was the Incredible Hulk, and I used to just go from normal to Hulk mode in the split second at the slightest thing, and I would have felt like ripping off my clothes. I could have flipped cars across the street, and all like my daughter forgot her lunchbox or something like that. And I go, oh, Jesus, and
Yeah.
totally out of proportion to what the
Yeah,
little
what the
incident
incident was.
was,
Yeah.
and so all that has stopped. And, I still annoy my wife. I still snap at my kids. I still,
We all
I'm
annoy our
not
wives. That's
perfect.
just how it is.
Yeah,
So
I'm not perfect by any means, but I'm a hell of a lot nicer person to be around for both myself and my family, I believe.
yeah, it sounds
So,
like it.
uh,
Yeah, it does sound like it. So you would recommend anybody who felt, I mean, we can do the plug now. You obviously provide these courses. I assume they're obviously online because you're in Northern Ireland and the rest of us who listen are all over the world. So you provide these courses. The website is the
yeah,
78% Club, as in number 7, number 8, and then percent word.
yeah,
Um, and have a look online. Have a look at the website.
yes. Yeah, like we do them in person, which is the best way. It's because you can really get a group engaging with each other, and when they see it just
Mm.
across the tables, that's when they can really start to let their guard down and start sharing and opening up. But we also do then online because it is just as it's not just as good, but it is effective and it
It's
is
still a
really
help.
good. It allows people in different locations to all come together, and it's good if you have a group who are not forced to go there, but that are keen to go and to listen and to share and open
Mm.
up a bit. It can be just as powerful as the in person. And then I do boot camp kind of, which is 1 hour evening over 1 night a week over 3 weeks, and it's much like the workshops or the online version, whereas they're more industry organized. But the boot camp then is if you just want to look into this on your own and do it, with like-minded
Yeah.
individuals who have all come to do this, so, and we keep the group small, 8 to 10 people, and so it's a safe environment, and we just go through the same stuff as we would in the workshop or the online talk. So yeah, they all have their benefits,
Mm.
and you could do it for a week, and you could
Yeah,
still
no,
be
absolutely.
uncovering stuff with people. But obviously, we have to keep it. So the workshop is 3.5 hours, 3 to 3.5. Online, 2.5 to 3, and then an hour a week for the boot camps. But yeah,
With the people that attend, do you find that you're, I suppose it's a generational thing because we talk about millennials we talk about Gen Z, the very young people who are very much more in touch with their feelings and their emotions and
mm,
absolutely know almost their limitations and when to stop and when to focus on things. And then you've got people, I'm going to say in our generations, who are sort of Gen X, who are like,
mm,
no, well, this is what we've always done, so we're just going to do it. And then you've
uh,
got sort of the whole range of different people. Is there a particular group of people who take this more on board?
um, I suppose the Gen X is maybe probably one of the larger groupings of it. I don't know the group or where Gen X turns
Oh, I
into the
think Gen
next
X is
one.
up. Gen X is 1966 to 1980, I think. That's the
Yeah.
years that you were born,
So that, and then the next one below that, I
which
don't
is,
know.
yeah,
It's
I want to
Gen.
say millennial.
Uh,
Yeah,
could be,
millennial.
could be. Yeah. So they would be as well. So it depends on the grouping really. So like say but then I do talks with universities and colleges for the final year students or any year really. But
Mm.
so they're young, and imposter syndrome can kick in
Oh,
at any
anytime. Oh,
age,
absolutely.
because
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
in college, you've got all your peers around, you're going, oh, she really knows this physics stuff, or she knows her fire
Mm.
dynamics, or why can't I work out this? And you're constantly being tested on your knowledge and your competence
Yeah.
as well. So that's why I like doing it with the college students, is to go through that, and also to say, when you get out into the industry, you might experience this as well, all these different
Mm.
things. So yeah, like it can be any grouping really. Probably the Gen Zs, maybe they're in, they say they have their own little thing going on, and they would come in the business courses. So when I'm working with a local enterprise office, you would have a lot of the Gen Z type, because they're trying
They're just
things and
young and they're
doing
trying to
things.
get into
Yeah,
industry. Yeah, no, I get it.
but at the same time, they're still feeling these little doubts, and they're kind of wondering, oh, is it the right thing to do? Should I? Who am
Mm.
I to be starting my own business? I'm stupid. Just get back to the job, and this kind of thing. So every industry they have very similar traits throughout all of them and all the ages, but they're just, I suppose, their individual issues might be slightly different. So for a fire engineer, it might be this. For a new business owner, it's this.
Mm.
For an existing developed business owner, it's this. But the whole pattern of hidden cognitive strain, imposter syndrome, the whole thing, it applies across the board to everybody equally. There's nobody that isn't. As I was saying, I'm doing a talk with the Law Society soon. I
Yeah.
do small business owners, engineers, students, and everybody gets the same from it. It's the same talk I do. I don't have to, I like to tailor it to each different grouping, but I don't change the core of it. It's just this whole same thing. I could take an
Yeah.
architect, an engineer, a lawyer, a surgeon, a shop owner, and student, and put them all in the one course, and they'd all come out with the same. We'd all be engaging together. So yeah, it's really widespread. Unfortunately, that's the 78% part, that
Mm.
we're all sitting there thinking that we're on our own, but it's to bring people into this club and just, accept and go, oh, yeah, it's great. I was thought I was the worst architect in New Zealand, or the worst this or
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And
No.
it's sharing stories and being able to laugh about it and just go, oh, yeah. So now that I know I'm not the worst,
How
I
do I
can,
change my behavior?
yeah,
Yeah. I know
fucking
what you
off
mean.
I go now, and kind of
Perfect.
shrug that off. And it is that easy to change this mindset. No, obviously, like I had depression and burnout and anxiety and all sorts from all the different going down so far. So obviously, I needed to get up more. But
Mm.
what I wanted to do was to try and catch people before they went down there.
Before that
To
position. Yeah.
yeah, to just let them say, "Oh yeah, I'm having these thoughts, but yeah, I'm not totally down there." Staring into the water or something like that at this point. And that's, to me, is where the value of the 78% club lies. Just that feeling of belonging, a bit of a community, a bit of a shared experience and shared understanding, and
No,
shaking
that
it
sounds
off
amazing.
then.
No, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on. I apologize for the fact that I appear to be dooming into gloom. I think it's the
Not at
sun's gone in now and everything's just gone a bit
all.
gloomy. Um,
Apologies if I talked for the whole thing.
oh no,
I love
no.
talking and
It's what
with
we
my.
wanted. It's what we wanted. That's been really, really useful. Anybody anybody who wants to be in contact with you, Jason, they can either go through us or they can contact you through your website. You've got a contact page on your website. Um, but no, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing. I think it is something we all every now and again struggle with. So
Mm, yeah, we're all in. Well, there's 78% of us in the club.
78% of us. No,
The other
absolutely.
22, I don't know what they're doing, but
Oh yeah. You're amazing.
yeah, they're just the natural born. What is it? The Teflon people where nothing sticks, and it's just kind of
Yeah.
there.
Teflon people. Well,
Uh,
thank you very much for listening, everyone. Thank you very much for watching.
thank you.
So if you've got any questions, I can pass them over to Jason, or you can contact Jason yourself. And I will see you all next week. I haven't organised a guest yet, but I think I know who I'm now going to have to contact. So Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
See everybody next week. Bye.
Good. Thank you. Bye.
Let me stop recording. There we go.